On today's episode, we are joined by Christine Buemann. Christine is co-owner of the Collective Mortgage Group. As we will find out in this episode, sometimes building a business is the easy part. It's surviving everything life throws at you while keeping it alive. That's the real challenge. Christine is a powerhouse mortgage broker, an entrepreneur whose journey redefines what success, resilience, and leadership actually look like. From early hustle to a cancer diagnosis, and still running a value-driven company. This one hits deep. I hope you enjoy this episode. Hi there, I'm Trevor Koot, and this is Business is Fucking Hard, the podcast where business owners pull back the curtain and talk about the realities of owning a business. We'll hear their stories, learn some lessons, and have some fun along the way. Thanks for joining us. Christine Buemann, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Our paths crossed recently, totally outside of the realm of a business conversation. And we quickly turned that paths crossing into a business conversation, which turned into an invitation to come onto the podcast. And I always love that, connecting with people, knowing that the story is something that will resonate with the folks who listen to this, sharing your story. But yours has a few different paths that I'm excited to explore and to see some of the intersections of business with other aspects of your life. So as we start that journey into the business journey that is Christine, tell me how you got started. What was your introduction into business?
Yeah, it's interesting. I always wanted to be self-employed. I guess I got started when I was a child, and my dad would pay me to read. He would pay me the value of a book to read like self-help books. So when other people were reading Goosebumps, I was reading How to Win Friends and Influence People. And I remember in grade 6, they were saying, what's your favorite book? And mine was some other self-development book, and recognizing at that point that maybe everyone else wasn't the same. So I think I was groomed from a young age to be self-employed.
Did he learn that trick in a self-help book?
I would imagine so. Yeah.
Pay your kid to read self-help books.
Although he could have made that up as well. I think it's something he would have done. So I always I love flexibility by nature, and love the idea of being self-employed. And even more than that, I love the idea of being a mom. And so I love the idea that I could have control over my own destiny and also my own time, which kind of leads us into the first mistake that I think a lot of business people make, is thinking that we're going to earn our way to freedom, which we essentially just usually earn our way to being completely burdened by tasks we don't need to do and suffocated without any time to breathe. So that was sort of...
And so that was the motivation. What was kind of that early iteration of you exploring having that freedom matched with the flexibility that you're looking for?
Yeah, so I think work ethic was really important to me. I had 3 jobs, was trying to buy my first house by the time I turned 19. I bought my first house when I was 19. Wow. Several houses by the time I was 23. So I had a passion for real estate. I also have been living on my own since I was 16. So just turned 16, I guess. So technically 15, and had this drive to just own my own home. Didn't feel like paying someone else's rent, or didn't feel like paying someone else's mortgage. So real estate specifically was a passion I had. And I was actually exploring acupuncture as a potential for what I wanted to do as my career. Again, being self-employed. I had a really colorful childhood, so was sort of finding my way. And a friend of mine was a mortgage broker, and I had always used mortgage brokers. And funny enough, looking back, people would come to me because I was quite young to be owning homes and to be investing in real estate. People would always come to me for advice. And looking back, I was giving completely wrong advice in some ways. So I am now the person where I'm like, no, don't listen to that other person. That was just their experience. So real estate came really naturally to me because I was already in the process of buying, selling, renting, trying out different things, experimenting with it. And then when I figured out that I loved mortgages, I, prior to becoming a mortgage broker, would study amortization schedules and had a really deep curiosity around how mortgages function. So the natural progression only made sense.
And what was kind of the time frame around this, like year wise, that you would have started kind of into that real estate space?
So I would say probably 2008.
Okay,
I'm really
okay,
curious about it. Got licensed in 2010. Uh,
yeah. So more like using a broker versus a bank was kind of on the moving into more of a common option for people as they bought their homes.
yes. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. And in
and
northern BC, I'm in northern BC, and it wasn't as common here. So
sure,
um,
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, and we're seeing those. I mean, not to deviate into the conversation around mortgage brokers, but we're seeing that become the percentage of mortgages that are done by brokers increases almost annually
absolutely.
on a proportion of all mortgages.
Yeah.
So what did you move from kind of an employed environment into self-employment, or it was just a transition right into getting your mortgage broker license and then pursuing that?
I was in the service industry for a really
Yeah.
long time
Okay.
while I was figuring out my way, which I think is fairly common actually, especially for entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
And then was working as some administrative roles, and then just went right into self-employed.
And was there? I love this question, and I honestly don't know if I ask it not every single guest, and I don't know what the listeners think, but I really like exploring kind of that initial move from the security of a role, whatever it is, in service industry or otherwise, into the unknown of, okay, now I'm stepping out and it's on me, right? So my curiosity is around what kind of preparation did you do
Yeah.
to ready yourself to know how long this is going to take, when I'll be financially sustainable, all of that kind of thing. But also kind of your emotional environment. What were you scared? Was it super confident that I can make this work? What did that kind of transition look like?
That's actually a really great question. I would say one of the most important things that I did. Now, keep in mind, this is 15 years ago. I'm early 20s and I'm working in the service industry. I actually picked up a third job for a while. So I was working on average 70 hours a week. And I spoke to another friend who was a broker. And I said, what do you need to know? What do I need to know? And from that conversation, I decided that I would be ready to be self employed when I had a minimum $10,000 in a business account that I could rely on and that I would expect to
Right,
make nothing for the first 6 months, so that I could be completely self sufficient in paying all of my mortgage, all my obligations, have a fallback of $10,000, and then say, okay, now I'm ready. So I was like, making $13 an hour, saving as
right,
every tip that I could to transition to this experience. And so that to me felt nice that it was a goal and that I was able to achieve the goal and then really start with that safety net that I had created for myself. And then emotionally, I think I was excited because I
yeah,
don't have the same level of post secondary, or didn't have the same level of post secondary as a lot of other people. And I had job interviews where they've actually said, you've solved this problem. I applied for like a computer job one time with no education with, and they said, you've solved this problem considerably faster than everyone else who we interviewed, but you don't have the credentials. So
right,
unfortunately, we can't give it to you. And
right.
so just having that level of understanding that unless I was really going to dive into several years of getting education, that this could be the best possible thing for me.
I I really like the kind of the uh, back the backstop of the account of $10,000, like that is your safety net. It's kind of what gives you that confidence. That probably helped play into kind of the emotional environment of being confident to move forward. Um, but I always what kind of I don't want to. I want to be careful because you and I are both in these types of industries, where it's a licensing, an independent contractor. I've often said that we don't give enough credit to kind of thinking of it as a business,
Yeah,
and
I was going to
running it
say the
as a
same thing.
business
Yes.
as independent contractors. Um, but to that end, how much consideration did you give as you transitioned? Did you do a lot of research on what is the potential in the market environment? Did you talk to other people that had already been in the mortgage broker industry in northern BC? What kind of business research did you do to know that there was going to be some sustainability there?
I didn't do much. There wasn't much to
Yeah,
do.
yeah,
I was a
yeah,
woman in my early 20s entering into a very male dominated industry with very
sure,
few brokers. So I more banked on myself and what I
yeah,
could do to learn. The other part of treating it like a business was super important to me. And so I actually just set up, so like going back to that transition, I just transitioned from being an employee to someone else to being an employee to myself.
right,
So I
sure,
started from day one with regular business hours. I was at my desk from whatever, I mean, usually 8 to 10 hours a day.
yeah,
I don't, looking back now, I'm just like, what was I doing all of that time? But my days were full and I made sure that I was proactively making plans. I was tracking
yeah,
activities instead of goals. I was meeting with several realtors a day. I was going to open houses. I was really, I was, all hands on deck in the very beginning. And so I really did focus on what does this business look like? And I did business goal setting, and also treated myself as an employee. I paid myself as an employee. When I transitioned from being a sole proprietor to being a limited company, making sure
right,
that I paid myself consistently a living wage. But I think that my experience, without going too far ahead, that a lot of people that start with entrepreneurship, when we see people in mortgage land, we're doing their financing, they're 2 years in. First thing that I think of is, have you paid your taxes? Have you
yeah,
prepaid your taxes for next year? Because
right,
not only, I think that's a mistake that is very common starting a business, is not setting up the appropriate tax structures. It's also just not thinking of it as a business
a
and then
business,
causing some
right,
lifestyle inflation. So suddenly you're
yeah,
like, I got a $10,000 commission check. This is amazing. But really, there are other expenses. It's
yeah,
proactively making sure that you're managing your budget. So that would be what I would say was really, really helpful in my
yeah.
long-term success of the business.
And where did that learning come from? Like you were just wise to that early days and you just said, "Oh, I should manage this a little bit differently than I did in my first year." Or where did you pick that up?
Making a lot of mistakes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
Yeah, sure.
I had a property that I'd taken over, and I was completely lost track of the reminder that I needed to pay the annual property taxes, and they weren't coming out with the mortgage because my other one it was, and so it was a matter of, oh my gosh, I have a $2,500 bill now. Okay,
Right.
proactively setting this up. It's my first year of having to pay taxes, and then saying, okay, I think definitely I had a mentor who was helpful in it as well. I also was mindful to set myself up with a team who I really trusted. So getting a good lawyer, getting a good accountant, getting a good bookkeeper, or whatever that looks like. I think to people that you can lean on, and also having wrong ones and having
Yeah.
overpaying in income tax, and having another accountant say, hey, if you do it this way, we can rectify it, but this is what that looks like. So I think having the right players, knowing your lane. In the
Yeah.
beginning, I spent so long doing my own bookkeeping as well. And like the first couple of years, and I'm so terrible at it. So I'm sure I could have saved that.
Well, and that's what happens. I want to touch on a few things there. That's definitely what happens is people, in you're good at a thing, but when you're in business to do that thing, you have all of the other components that come with the business that aren't necessarily related to that thing, like all the administration functions, all of the bookkeeping, all of the things that, sales, whatever it is. And you need to, regardless of whether you're good at it, you have to do it.
Yes,
It's your business,
yes,
right? The other piece that you touched on is this learning through doing, and that comes up repeatedly in the podcast, is this idea that business ownership, entrepreneurship, learning through mistakes and through missing things is part of that process. The other piece I want you to unpack that you just talked about a little bit is around the mentorship side, because that is something that comes up quite a bit. Some people do it intentionally. Some people, it's just by virtue of running into the right person at the right time. What did that look like for you, and how did that relationship evolve as you got into more of the business side?
Yeah, I had a really great mentor in the very beginning. He was my managing broker. And when I look back, there are things that I would change for sure. The training wasn't there. I remember one time calling and asking a question about mortgages. I went into it with very little knowledge, and the courses don't teach you much. And being made to feel like I was a complete idiot and being talked to in a
Uh,
really condescending way. And I hung up the phone and I just sat at my desk and I cried. It was Friday, it was subject removal. I had to now call these clients back to say, like, there is no answer. And they were upset and there was just so much emotions. And I just sat there and I'll never forget just sitting there crying. And I promised myself that day that I would never, ever make anyone feel that way. And so I've actually received criticism in our industry of like, why do you give all away? I've got all the templates. I'm like, whatever you need, I'm there for you. For so many years, I would take calls from new brokers, whatever I need, whatever I could do to support them, because I never wanted anyone to feel the way that I felt in that same day. So that is the one of the sides of the mentorship that I think is neglected, is that when you are the mentor, it's annoying. There are
yeah,
times when you're like, you should know this. You've asked me 3 times. And so I can see both sides of it. But the what I appreciated the most about it was the accountability. So one thing I've been learning through leadership has been the people who get paid the most are the people who are the most accountable and the most responsible. You know, when you think about when you go into a hospital, the people, the LPNs are really
right.
doing the hard work. The RNs are administering things, making decisions. And then the doctors, it probably, if you were to be an outsider, you'd probably think, oh my gosh, these people don't do that much for the amount that they get paid. However, they are the ones liable. They're the ones
Yep.
accountable. And so what I found really helpful was it added a degree of accountability for me. So we would meet every week and say, what are your goals for the week? It really helped me with some of the Simon Sinek stuff of finding your why. And I had a goal of 2 handwritten thank you cards a day, which I still try to keep up to, not as well these days. And then 5 face-to-face meetings a week, 1 like event a month, and then kind of an annual thing as well. And we would just talk about those meetings. And to know that I had that coming up, I was way more proactive in making sure that I was becoming accountable to somebody else. And I think
Right.
that's hard in business because when you're only accountable to yourself, it's so easy for us to let ourselves down. And as just a nature of function of being a human, that the easiest people for us to disappoint is ourselves.
Yeah. That's a really great all of that wrapped up with a bow on it is really great. You know, that accountability, kind of transitioning from the mentorship to identifying what the value is behind that, leveraging that value to be more self-motivating, and then using that self-motivating to be accountable to yourself, but also creating that delivery to your clients or whoever you're serving. So
Yeah.
I really, really like that evolution.
Or even joining like a mastermind or joining a BNI or joining a
Right,
group where you can say, this is what my goal is. Can somebody help
right.
me with this? You know,
Yeah,
I think there's nothing wrong with asking for help in that
yeah,
accountability piece as well. It's like working out with a partner. Most often you don't
yeah,
go there to the gym if you've got someone waiting for you, you know?
yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I really like that. What was the like the transition? I want to get to kind of the bigger business model that you ended up creating in the mortgage environment. Give me a little bit of sense of the pathway after, you know, you've established yourself, you've got kind of your business model around yourself. What was the transition past that?
So I would say quick little run through. I got licensed in 2010, got engaged, married, and pregnant in 2011, had a baby in 2012, pregnant in 2013, 2014, had another baby. By 2015, I was like headed fast into a deep depression of what am I gotten myself into? And then 2016 was sort of a transitional year for me. I really, that window of time, I was kind of like, what do I really want out of this? I had worked so hard to build this business in an attempt to give myself more time. And I think that I got a little bit lost in the time and money and the difference in what I was chasing as what success was for me. I
Right.
think oftentimes we think that money is going to be the ultimate goal, but money is really just the conduit to freedom, in my experience.
Yeah.
And really, you can have all the money in the world. Like, look at Steve Jobs, right? He was the first one to say, "Hey, what was this all for?"
Right.
So yeah, 2017, I started to get acknowledged in the mortgage industry and started to get a little bit of attention. And I was like, this feels good. So I was in some magazines and I started winning awards. And then I believe it was 2018, I was asked to be a director for the largest like specific brand franchise in Canada. And we had 107 brokers at the time. It was when the super brokerage was a really big thing. So in mortgage land, most of the brokers were on their own or just with small groups. And then there were a ton of experiences through that. And most often in mortgage land, and I can't speak to other businesses specifically, but I think it's similar that when you find something, you're good at it, it's recognized, you find your passion, and then you just sort of like, okay, what comes next? I want that leadership role, especially for those of us who are, leaning towards entrepreneurship. Most often we have that same craving for leadership. And I kind of skipped the part of like starting your own business and then working your way up. It gets really big. And then you're like, wait a second, this isn't what I thought it would be. And then
Yeah.
you change. So I really did have the benefit of like a shortcut to suddenly managing this entire group of people and the amount of HR concerns, the amount of
Yep.
complaining about things that there was a sense of entitlement that you're kind of like this, so I was able to have that experience and then recognize that it actually wasn't what I wanted. And I really started working on redefining what success was for me. And to me, I realized that it's relationships, it's connection, and it doesn't necessarily matter about the facade that we're putting on and how much volume. So in my world, it's how much volume you're putting through. If your net income is going to be considerably lower based on how many employees you have to pay or whatever your expenses are, for me, what I really decided was that what I wanted was more money for my family so that we could earn our way. I could earn our way to more freedom and really just more time and less stress. So the three of the directors, or two of the other directors, and myself stepped down from our roles, and we started this little boutique brokerage. And we actually just created the entire foundation, said, look, if no one follows us, no problem. We just know that what we want is just a safe space to work with our own autonomy and also collaborate together. And then lo and behold, a few people came along, a few more people came along, got a little dramatic with the with our industry of some, yeah. I won't go into that. There's some
Yeah. We don't have to. Yeah.
but yeah, it ended up being one of the most beautiful experiences, and it's just such an amazing group of people. We talk to a lot of people who want leadership, they want ownership. So where we came to is that this EXP model is really interesting in real estate, and there wasn't much similar in mortgages. But most people would say, "I just want ownership of the company," and so then I would say, "Okay, why?" What is
Yeah.
it about ownership? Because there's not really much money to be made in a brokerage. It's probably similar to real estate.
Yeah.
So what is it that feels good about ownership? And most people were saying, we want a seat at the table. We want relevance. We want to know that our voices are heard. And so finally we said, well, why can't we give you all of those feelings and the rest of the benefits of being an owner without having 10 or 15 people sitting at a table trying to make one decision with very conflicting ideas?
Yeah.
And yeah, our group is every single person who joins us, the entire team has to approve. And we are very specifically designed for not only high producing, very experienced brokers, but also just really high quality humans. And it's been a pleasure.
And what did the framing look like? Kind of a similar question to when you went from the service industry into getting becoming a mortgage broker and that path in front of yourself. Having been a director at a larger one of the, what did you call it, a super brokerage or a mega brokerage?
Yeah.
Yeah. What did you take from that to build a plan? Did you build kind of the business model, the business plan with the few folks that were joining you in that venture? Did you know that you were going to end up in kind of the model that was that intentional, or did that kind of just flow there? How much business planning was there in building that structure out?
Not as much as there should have been for sure, and we
Yeah.
changed our minds a lot along the way. Essentially,
This is why I ask these questions,
yeah,
because I love digging into it and then finding out the real, like, what actually happened. Yeah.
totally. We
Yeah.
really just expected it would be the three of us. We said, okay, we can put
Yeah.
our numbers,
Okay.
three of us, this is great. And then people wanted to follow. And we'd always said, okay, we'd be open if they would follow. Um, and the fact that all three of us are very, very different has been so helpful because
Oh,
we
interesting.
set a framework around. I always say what we do best is we conflict well. So we disagree on most things or many things. And it's amazing because it allows us to respect each other and come through with open minds and then come to it somewhere in the middle, and so we have a general rule, we have a veto rule that if one person doesn't want, if someone wants to join our company and if one of us in leadership disagree, then it's a straight up veto, no questions asked. And then if it passes all three of us, it goes down to the whole team. And then we kind of move forward from there. So we don't have very many people join. I would say, more than 80% of the people who've asked to join us, we've just said, unfortunately, no. Which then, of course, creates a bit of a cycle of other people being like, well, how can I join? And it's just,
Yeah.
so I guess that with our previous company, they would let anybody join. It was like, bundle
Right.
a seat, here's some money. And they would, I mean, most brokerages would say that they don't do that. But the reality of it is there were a lot of people that it can sort of erode the culture a little bit in that way because you're more focused on your volume and creating this super brokerage than you are on the quality of your business.
Right.
So we knew for us that we had expectations around how they would operate. We knew everyone personally before they came in. So there's that, or I guess almost everyone. For context, the average broker in BC would do, or in Canada, I guess, would do 7 million, and ours average is 40. And we have a minimum because we are a very low cost model where we have a minimum of 15 before we can even consider it, just because we just can't afford to have people who are doing less than that. Minimum 10
Yeah.
years experience. And then the other one that we really focus on is called funding ratios. So it's how, when you send a mortgage to a lender, how likely you are that it's actually going to go through. Because then if we have, unfortunately, low funding ratios, which is very common with large companies, the lenders don't want to deal with you.
Yeah.
You're wasting their time. So sure, they're making money off of you, but they're also going through and approving a lot of
Right.
deals that aren't actually going through. So those metrics we had put into place before anyone joined us when we started thinking about people joining us. And then, we've kind of experimented with a few things. One of my favorite sayings is safe enough to try, good enough for now. And I
Yeah.
had it on my computer for a long time. And so we would just kind of experiment with things. I don't know. I don't, it's interesting as humans that I think we expect to know what we like. Like, do you like bananas? I don't know. I've never had one. So like, let me try
Yeah.
it and then I'll tell you if I like it or not. Right. Yet
Yeah.
if you just said, oh, I don't like bananas, then there's this just sort of assumption that you should know what you want or don't know, or that you can't change your mind, you know?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we changed our minds in a few things for sure.
I'm curious on more of the business side, like not the mortgage brokerage
Yes.
side and the lending and the numbers, the volume, all of that stuff, but more in the context of the business itself.
Yeah.
There's like businesses inherently want growth, right? Like the business, if you consider it an entity, it wants scale, it wants to keep feeding the machine. It may be motivated somewhat by the partners, by those that are benefiting from the business, but just in the generality of being within kind of a capitalist environment, there's kind of this natural growth sensation around business.
Yeah.
You've kind of capped the opportunity for that.
Mhm.
Where do you, like, from a business perspective, where do you see kind of the necessity around growth in order to continue to be able to pay the bills as they keep going up? And like, there's got to be, I'm sensing there's got to be some rationale for scale, but you're really limiting that with kind of your process.
Yeah. And that's what makes us, I believe, so different, is that we really are not focused on skill whatsoever.
Yeah.
The function of how mortgage brokers do business is a bit different in that we are sort of like the franchise. So it would be like if the main franchise not that interested in growing the number of stores that you have, but in the quality of service. So for
Right.
me, I'm actually more concerned about the growth of our brokers, about
Right.
the human experience and how can you evolve to be a better human and to have more satisfaction in life in general, not just
Wow.
money. Because I've really changed over the last few years how I view money, and that money is truly for me a conduit to a feeling.
Yeah.
So you can be the place that helps scale people as big as they can possibly go in business and make as much money as possible. And in my experience, because most of us have gone through that, it doesn't achieve the same level of satisfaction that we think it's going to. So again, maybe took my previous experience and created a bit of a loophole and said, okay, well, how can I help you to achieve the feeling that money is looking to do? So like we took our whole company to LA last summer, to Lewis House Summit of Greatness, where we saw Esther Perel and David Goggins and had all of these opportunities for personal growth. Is that going to help them get more mortgage volume? I don't know, maybe a little bit. Like
Right.
maybe they'll come back feeling more refreshed. However, is it going to help them feel more accomplished, more connected, more
Yeah.
within a community? And that's really what I'm ultimately looking for, which is, again, not what society says that we should, but
Right.
it's what feels best for me around when I think about what success looks like.
And do your partners agree? Like, obviously, to an extent, they must, but with that kind of conflict, that healthy conflict that you have,
Yeah.
are they motivated differently? Or as a company, the motivation is the same and you just kind of differ on how you get there?
Yeah. Yeah. I would say as a company, we're all in alignment with that for sure.
Yeah.
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 We do have minimum targets, and for sure we want to make sure that we're,
Sure.
making enough
Sure.
to pay
Sure.
the bills, but we're
Sure.
really about supporting our brokers and however they can make the most within their own individual companies. I think one of the differences as well is that my partner that is like the biggest partner in the company, is we're the two highest volume producers in the company. So
Right.
for us, our primary bread and butter is still mortgage brokering. We're not
Yeah.
running
Yeah.
a business in
Yeah.
that same way. And we also set the framework up so that we knew that what the minimum was, for maintenance, and we didn't set it up necessarily for growth. Growth for us
Yeah.
is really grassroots. If somebody feels like a great fit and they would contribute energetically to our company, then that's amazing. But I would say we're all very much in alignment with, we will not sacrifice integrity for money or our values for growth if the direction is simply for an ego boost rather than an ultimate, satisfying what works best for my family and what works best for me as a human.
Right. Right. Um, I have
Well,
to share a
we've
personal.
done, it's worked out well for us. It sounds like I'm like a crazy hippie, but we do make a lot of money. So,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, but yeah, I think it's very like it's uh, very positive. The kind of making that very healthy to make that keep that relationship as you've identified it between kind of the money, but what's the goal behind the money? What's the reason? What's the rationale? What's it doing for us? And you've created that culture, you've created that environment, that space for people to really make that connection for themselves, but you've also fostered it once people are within kind of the walls of your organization. And I think that's really, like, it's a lovely thing. It's just from a business owner's perspective, it's counterintuitive sometimes to.
100%. Yeah.
But I will say that on again, thematically in the podcast, we hear a lot on kind of purpose before profit, that there has to be a drive for why you're doing the business, rather than just the money that's coming in. And you're taking that one step further. Like, this isn't just the purpose of the business, this is the purpose that each individual is finding for being there and being within the company itself. And I think that's a kind of taking it to the next level, and I appreciate that. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. I would say what I've done in that, sort of in that theme, has been studied a lot of people who achieved the level of success that I thought I wanted to achieve as well, and thought, what lessons have they taken along the way? And that to me was what was sort of the strongest lesson was, what is this all for?
Yeah.
You know, I've talked to
Yeah.
people who are very well known, who are doing all the things and who are, you know, achieving all of the things. And I've said, what is this all for? And
Yeah.
sometimes they've said, I don't know. And then I've said,
Yeah.
who is this all for?
Yeah.
And they've said, I don't know. And when does it
Yeah.
end? And does it have to end? Because if it's for you, then your possibilities are infinite. You know, if
Yeah.
you're proving something or if you're whatever is going on for you, if you don't have a level of awareness for it, then you can't pour your passion, you can't concentrate your passion into something that feels amazing for you if you're so busy trying to fit everyone else's expectations and business as well. You know, if you're
Yeah.
trying to be everything to everyone all the time, you're just a diluted message to everyone. So you can't get clear on what feels good for you and what path you're going down without having a really clear vision of why.
And I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, I think too that, like, as I was talking earlier, businesses kind of take on a life of their own. They become their own entity, and we get so caught up in more business, maybe not even more bottom line, which is
Mm-hmm.
sometimes the problem. That's where
Yes.
I got
Yes,
for
me too.
me when I early days, and I talk about this in my episode when I got interviewed for this podcast. Thank you, Jeff King, who interviewed me. But I got caught up in more business, more employees, more top line, but not more bottom line. And so the business started to become cannibalistic. It started to feed on itself, and I was motivated by all the wrong things. But you get into this engine, and that becomes your motivation. And then if somebody had stopped me and said, "Why? Like, why are you like?"
Mhm.
I wouldn't have been able to answer. It
Totally.
was just because that's what I feel like I should be doing,
Yeah.
right? Christine, I want to make a transition now. We've talked about kind of the business side, and I definitely want to touch on kind of this intersection of a personal journey that you've had with the impacts on the business, the impacts on your partners, the impacts on your family, and I want to leave space for you to introduce that in a way that you're comfortable to share with the listeners.
Yeah, thanks. So I would say, as I was going through getting lost down this someone else's definition of success, I started to experience some health issues, which again is really common for entrepreneurs who start to go to burnout. And, you know, my husband was in logging, was often away. I was trying to run a business and be the best mom that I could, trying to find the synchronicities between work and life. And it's interesting when they talk about balance. And I was definitely sacrificing myself at the expense of my business growing really, really big. And then eventually ended up just getting to the point where my body gave in and ended up getting cancer. Not that I'm saying that's how it happened, but I definitely was in a non-regulated state as much as I am nowadays. So I was diagnosed in 2022, late 2022, with cancer. Although I was first sick in 2020 with COVID.
Holy, yeah,
It's been a long journey for sure. And
yeah.
then did almost a year and a half, had to pick my kids up and move to another community, did some really aggressive chemo, radiation, all the things, surgery. And then as of July last year, I was supposedly cancer free. Everything was going amazing. Moved back to Prince George, where I live. And then in December, they found a brain tumor. So it had spread. We don't know when. So now I'm just sort of back in through that journey of recovery and healing from that. And it's definitely been a gift in sandpaper. I mean, to say that it hasn't come with challenges would obviously be naive, but there are a tremendous amount of gifts that have come from it as well. And one of them, as the business owner, was that I had to step away from my business. I had to relinquish control 100%. And if you ever want to know what your why is and what's important to you, then having a diagnosis like that is an immediate
Yeah.
realization. And I called my staff and said, I'm not going to be in for a bit. And so to be able to sort of weave these together and figure out what works best for me has been a really interesting journey. And When you only have so much energy in a day, and when you only have so much ability to care for something, your family, or maybe it's not, maybe maybe it is your business, but for me, my family was just such a priority. And so I also was able to say, I have the best team on the planet, and they truly do care. And what they really wanted was to make sure that this other baby that I had, which was my business, was well supported while I went through my treatment. And so to watch them all just rise to the level, I was like, I'm the problem here. It was so amazing.
Should have gotten out of the way a long time ago.
Got out of my own way so much earlier. And so we laugh about it, because I will come back in and I'll try and like figure things around. And I most often will say to them, it feels like the biggest issue is when I'm here too much in the business. And they're like, ha, ha, ha.
Yeah.
We don't want to say it, but yes, it is the problem. I have a very high drive, and I have a very high sense of urgency. So everybody else's personality profiles are that they get along really well, they're kind, they're thoughtful. And I'm like, why wasn't this done yesterday? Come on,
Yeah.
I lead with kindness, but I definitely push things faster than they would.
Sure.
And yeah, it was absolutely phenomenal to watch how they rose to the occasion and continue to do so all the time, and continue to just operate with such a high quality of care, caring for me and my time, caring for each other. And again, really just sort of reevaluating what that fulfillment looked like for them. My primary assistant got pregnant with twins right at the same time as I was diagnosed. So then we trained someone else during that window for her to take over. And that's within my little brokerage. So that's my staff, and they've all been amazing. And then I also have the brokerage. And again, they were all completely amazing. And I host a weekly call where I arrange speakers and, try and make sure that we're adding as much value as possible. And when I couldn't do that, they created a list and other people would step up. And for me, the brokerage that we have is really a group of leaders, and they absolutely stepped up and cared for me beyond measure, but beyond what I could have ever asked for.
Amazing. Absolutely amazing. Again, trying to keep the focus on kind of the relationship with the business. And forgive me, I don't want to overstep. I don't want to make it feel like it's prying as the part of the job description that I have is, well, there is no job description. I just know that I'm supposed to ask the question. So, but I'm curious about that why, that drive, when you have something that it must just give you, I can't relate. I've had nothing in my life that would allow me to relate to your scenario, but it just must be a profound new understanding or vision or belief system, whatever it is. How can any part of you say, some of my time, some of my energy, some of my passion, some of my health, my wellness, my mental capacity, I want to continue to give to the business? How can you not just look at it and say, that's one thing that is not part of my why anymore, and the rest of my life is going to be dedicated to what I like, other than obviously the financial piece and that kind of thing?
Yeah, it's a great question, and something I've thought about at length. It's my passion. And so I think that's one thing, that if you find something that's your passion, it doesn't feel as much like work. When I went through my toughest chemo in the first round, I totally unplugged, but I also would chime in. I would forward emails. I think there was an element of distraction too. There's a part of it that you tie your purpose to it, that you've worked so hard to just like step away from something like that. And I do really enjoy that time. And so there's a part of having to obviously like continue making money and continue with your business and the trajectory. But I think it's just really those two pieces would be distraction from your current circumstances, especially when you're doing cancer, because it can be all consuming. It also, I think I'm good at what I do. And so when you're sitting there and you're bald with no eyelashes or eyebrows, you can't move, and you can sort of create a moment of feeling competent and confident, then I enjoyed those little pockets, because I couldn't do them for the 8 or 10 hour days that I was doing previously, but I could create and cultivate little pockets of those moments. And then, just wanting to keep the boat afloat.
that, like, honestly, that was an amazing response to that question, because like all of those small pieces collectively make so much sense that you would keep going. You would keep doing that as one aspect of kind of what is, whether you call it motivation, in the aspect of, fighting cancer and feeding your family and all of that, but also just your purpose, as you said. Like, yeah, so amazing.
I think
Truly amazing,
I
Christine.
don't know if anyone else is. It would only probably really relate to people who are navigating a severe illness. But I think it's easy, especially now that I'm considered as a stage 4 cancer patient. It's easy to identify as a cancer patient and to do your life as if you're just doing cancer. And I don't
Right.
think that for me that really encourages much of the longevity and the feeling alive and the like. This is my, just continuing going on with life. I think
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it gets pretty easy to wallow in self-pity if you allow it to, and just simply identifying as a cancer patient and living as though that is your only way of being, I think can be a slippery slope as well. Whatever you're going
Yeah,
through, as a widow, as a, whatever other illness that you're suffering, if that's your primary way of identifying yourself, then you kind of live into that thought of yourself. Whereas I'm an investor, I'm a mortgage broker, I'm a mom, I'm a friend, I'm a leader, and I love living into those roles as my primary focus. And yep, I'm doing cancer at the same time, living with it as a chronic illness and something that a lot of people go through. So I have the privilege of most people that I interact with knowing what I'm going through and
right,
extending a lot of
right.
grace and compassion. But there are a lot of people going through a lot of really, really hard things, running their
Yes,
businesses,
yes.
not having the opportunity to share their struggles too.
Yeah, yeah. What an amazing story, and truly inspiring for obviously for business owners. The point of the podcast is for people to share their journey, so that business owners can feel like it can relate and can feel like there's a safe space for them to understand that what they're going through is what others are going through. And your story is unique, but I think there's so much commonality and so much synergy, and certainly lessons that people can take away, even more from a personal perspective, as I've done. And I really appreciate that, Christine.
Thank
Truly.
you. Well,
Yeah.
I got stuff coming up.
Thank you. Thank you for giving your time to this. I really, really, really appreciate it.
Oh, my
Yeah.
pleasure. Thanks for having me, and hopefully, I think challenges are a spectrum, right? So mine may be the most extreme, but there are a lot of people that are somewhere that are following someone, whether they're combining
Absolutely.
entrepreneurship with struggling with mental health, or they're experiencing anxiety or depression. Whatever people are going through, I hope that they understand that there's a whole spectrum of people that can relate.
Absolutely. Very, very well said. Thank you so much. And I really look forward to our paths continuing to cross.
Yeah, me too.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Business is Fucking Hard. Please remember that this show is meant to create community and share ideas in the business world. For advice specific to your business, talk to an expert in your industry. Please like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Check us out on Instagram and LinkedIn, and invite others to do the same. This episode was hosted by me, Trevor Koot, and produced and edited by Alex Harris. Thanks for tuning in, and talk to you next time.